So now quickly move on to our next session, that is session 4, panel discussion. The topic for the session is Electrifying Urban Futures, accelerating the adoption of EV infrastructure in India, focusing on the role of EV infrastructure in combating climate change and transforming transportation systems in urban areas. And yes, everyone, it focuses on the growth of EV infrastructure in reducing urban carbon emissions and fighting climate change. By accelerating electric vehicle adoption, this transformation supports a sustainable and eco-friendly future for cities in India. So now I kindly request my colleague from ABP Network, Ms. Chahat Jain, to please come up on the stage. I kindly request Mr. Prem Prakash, CEO, Servotech EV Infra Private Limited, to please join us on stage. Mr. Prem Prakash leads the company in pioneering electric vehicle charging infrastructure and renewable energy solutions in India. His focus on innovation, sustainability, and efficiency is accelerating EV adoption and promoting a greener and a carbon-reduced future. Over to you, Chahat.
Thank you so much, Ankita, for introducing our guest to us. And moving on to the session on EV, but sir, before starting the session, let's just see how many people over here actually drive an EV. And that is how we will get to know that is hesitancy still exists or doesn't.
Yeah.
How many of you is driving an EV? I can barely see 3 or 4 hands. So I think my first question to you would be, talking about eastern states, talking about north, west, south, like I would say the EV hesitancy adoption, the adoption of EV hesitancy is still there. Like, do you think it still matters? Because I can barely see 3 or 4 hands.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me, and very good afternoon to all of you. Yes, adoption of EV, is actually not picking up the way it should have done. I mean, if I have to cite an example of our neighboring country, I mean, not a right example, but Nepal last year has got 83%. I mean, out of total new vehicles registered in Nepal, 83% of those vehicles were EV, wherein in our case, it's less than 8%.
That's right.
But then coming back to your question, I mean, if I really compare the adoption, the kind of infrastructure available in India, in eastern part of the country, I think, west and north, especially the central zone, does better than eastern part. I can also, I mean, to be very fair to the eastern part in terms of their infrastructure, the driving terrains, dependency on two-wheelers, or possibly the, the income strata. I mean, you have SEC B, SEC C, I mean, mostly available in eastern part. I mean, that part of the country has really not picked up on EV, but then there are certain challenges. It's picking up. Assam for the last 2-3 months have done great job. Though it's not a pure eastern part, but Arunachal has shown some tremendous growth. Bihar, for that matter, is number 5 in terms of EV adoption. So if we are able to provide a consistent grid capacity, if we are able to make people aware about how and what EV does for people at large, if we are able to really, bring down the cost of ownership of EVs,
right.
When I talk about the income strata in eastern part, I think,
then we will probably see a change.
Yes.
Moving ahead, I would say that, when you mentioned that, probably the northern states or the central states are doing much better. Again, that is the role of the private players. That is the role of the government in actually removing this hesitancy, in telling people, in making them aware. Because of course, the government and our country we have our own targets. We have our targets of like 30%, the entire fleet should be electric vehicles. We have our net zero carbon targets by 2070. Then again, the onus is on us.
Yes.
Us as in private players, the media, and also the government, to make people aware how EV is not only actually more affordable for them, easier for them, comfortable for them, but also good for the planet and our nation.
Yeah, so I'll just cite an example of how private players are playing an important role.
Right.
Recently, there was one of the Asia's largest auto expo which got concluded last week itself. And all the cars, almost 20 odd cars were launched and all of them were EVs. Not even
Most of
one
them.
car. I mean, almost all
All
the
of
cars
them.
were EVs, not a conventional car. That goes on to say that private players are hell-bent. They are all focused on, really making India a country with a lot of EVs. At least, the adoption rate goes up. They are all conscious about, the contribution to pollution which the traditional or the conventional vehicle makes.
That's right.
At the same time, if you ask me, if you're hinting me towards, pointing out certain challenges for private sectors, I'll talk about my organization, Servertech. I mean, we have installed and commissioned 100 stations across the length and breadth of India. And, while working in UP, you get electricity connection in flat 2 days. 48-hour single window and you set up a station. We take 5 days, 5 to 10 days to set up a station and it's up, live running.
And that is done with the help of?
So electricity connection obviously would come from government, right? I mean, the DISCOMs are so well educated in states like Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, for that matter, Tamil Nadu, Bihar, that, when you go and apply for an EV meter in such states, you have a single window approval, you get a connection in 24 to 48 hours, you set up your station. But when
That's
you go
really
to other
fast.
states, and especially when the eastern part and all, unfortunately, the DISCOMs are not even aware about the EV policies which they have. So, of late, West Bengal and Assam has shown some tremendous positive, influence towards EV policy. And I think, it's picking up, but yes, eastern part is a bit slow comparatively.
So we can clearly say that the penetration will again take some time. A lot of our audience are from Kolkata.
Yes.
Private players.
I belong to eastern part as well. And, so there are three core issues. I mean, if we are able to address that as private players and government hand to hand. So one is there are too much of dependency on two-wheelers out there.
Okay.
Now, if we are making a
So is
four-wheeler,
there a major reason behind it?
one of the reasons. So if we are able to actually make, the public transport EVs, if we are able to make all these cars and all very much affordable,
Right.
there are possibilities that the penetration would go up. Second element is that the grid capacity is very inconsistent in eastern part. Now that directly impacts your EV charging station. I mean, a 60 kilowatt charger, if it is installed and if it is not getting the consistent power supply, there is a problem. And the third element is, barring Bihar, West Bengal and Assam, not many states are really focusing on, aligning their EV policies with the central government. And that is where, private players like us, when we go to, same state with different DISCOM, they have different rates, different mechanism and all. But you go to a state like UP, and you go to any DISCOM for that matter, UP would have some 5 DISCOMs. You have the similar form, similar mechanism, a very, very a seamless kind of procedure.
Right.
You apply and you get connections in 48 hours. So I think all these three aspects, which is one, supply of power. Second is, bringing down the cost of ownership of a vehicle. And
Right.
third, making people aware about how the EV is actually adding value to, climate change is going to help us.
And it's more affordable as well. But you just mentioned that most of the people have two-wheelers. But again, I would like to say that there are a lot of EV two-wheelers as well, right?
Yes.
Available in the market.
Yeah.
Easily, it's very accessible and they're more affordable than EV cars.
Yes.
So driving a two-wheeler doesn't stop you from owning an EV.
You
It
are-
could be electric two-wheeler as well. And
Yeah.
there are ample of the options available in market right now.
Yes.
So it's just that people have to start adopting it. People have to have the right knowledge for it.
Yeah.
And also the infrastructure should be easily available for their
Correct.
daily commute. That is what actually is required, nothing else.
You are absolutely right. I mean, when we actually talk about two-wheelers, the quantum matters. And of course, eastern part is picking up in EV two-wheelers where they, they charge their vehicle overnight at their place itself. So, technically, if you say it's not an EV infrastructure, you are taking your, residential power point, wherein the 15 ampere plug you are charging your vehicle, but then that adds to the climate change. I mean,
Right.
that is a commendable thing which is happening in eastern part as well. Yeah, you are absolutely right. But when we really take the holistic approach, the four wheelers, the heavy vehicles, those loaders which are causing maximum pollution,
Right.
and hampering the climate. And when we talk about infrastructure, it should be available for any and every vehicle out there. And that is where we see a little bit of challenge in few of the states.
I'm pretty sure that Servotech, as in you as a private player, would also be thinking of having your own projects in the eastern states. Do you
Yeah.
have any, or are you planning to have any? And what are your targets for those states?
Yeah,
Like, do you
so-
have any specific strategy looking at the demography, topography, population?
Yeah, so as an organization, we have already done more than 8,000 stations, 100 stations in this year.
Pan-India?
Pan-India, yes. And eastern part, we have done certain stations. We are setting up a station is directly aligned with the kind of vehicle getting registered in those areas. We have certain big projects coming up. We are in talks with various state governments in eastern part as well. It's there in pipeline. It's not been announced so far. Yes, there are certain projects which we are doing in eastern part of India. And if we really cross the border of eastern part of India very soon, we are going to announce a mega project in Nepal as well, since it comes with a lot of opportunity. So yes, we are actually thinking of penetrating deep into eastern part.
Right.
And few of the states would be like Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Orissa, Assam. This is what we are targeting to.
I think it would be not correct if we do not mention, if we do not talk about India as a player in the global market when it comes to EV. So we also have to probably differentiate ourselves, our country, along with our neighboring countries. Like, where do we stand?
So there are few examples, and I'm sure the audience
You
would
just
be knowing
started
about
with
it.
one.
Yes. So I'll give you a few examples. We as an organization, we have reduced our charger price. We are primarily into manufacturing of chargers and setting up a station. Our charger price in the last 2 years have dropped by 56%. And that has been possible only when we started, paying attention to having, indigenously built component. So
That's
it's
right.
our reliance on, imports for components to manufacture EV chargers have dropped, drastically. 76% of the components which we are using to our chargers to manufacture those chargers are India built. We also support Make in India concept of Honorable Prime Minister. So we are going to be the EV capital of the world. Nepal has been buying, electric vehicles from India for long.
That's great.
They have reduced the duties and taxes on buying EVs.
Right.
They have increased, taxes to 283% on conventional vehicles. And of course, the way we rule the world, IT world, we are going to rule the EV world as well. And it's a myth that one of our neighboring country produces the cheapest component for EVs. India has actually, has started catching up to that particular trend.
Right.
And we have started producing a lot of components from charger point of view or automobile point of view. And we are going to be the world's EV capital.
Here I would like to actually ask people, as in the buyers or people who actually drive an EV or people who are thinking of, that what actually stops them from buying an EV? Because in my personal experience also, till the time I did not have it, I did not know much about it. So once I had it at my place, it was so easy to use, and plus it's so affordable. I think people must not be knowing it.
Yeah.
So anyone in the audience who's probably thinking of buying an EV, but some second thoughts are coming in the mind, you have an expert over here. They can actually answer your question for you. Can we have a question from the audience? Anyone has a question already?
Hi, good afternoon. My question is, there are two aspects to buying an EV. That's number one, the initial cost, and number two is the availability of a charging point. I travel quite often from Delhi to Moradabad, and I don't see any charging point in between, and that's about a distance about 200 kilometers. So unless you have the infrastructure for, electric vehicle to be charged on the way, that's where, the constraint is. So what plans do you have for having an infrastructure all around? And how do you reduce the cost? Because if you compare the cost of an EV as compared to an ICE engine, it's, I think, nearly 1.6 7 times or 1.8 times. So initially, if you're taking that much of a cost, so where does the economics work out?
Yeah. So it's a fantastic question. I mean, generally we face such question from all our prospective customers and respondents to various initiative which we have taken. If you take a 10 years horizon, even today when owning an EV is very costly affair, your overall cost of operation comes to 1 rupee per kilometer if you own an EV. If you do a simple maths, initially it's very high, but later on for a 10 years or 15 years horizon, and especially when it emits lowest emission and almost zero tailpipe emission, EVs are not going to get expired, like your diesel or petrol vehicle for 15 years, 10 years and all. So one aspect is if you are looking at long-term horizon, EV gives you 1 rupee per kilometer kind of cost of operation. Now, coming back to your point, and you are absolutely right, sir. Having infrastructure at various places is very important, but that beats the range anxiety which a customer would have or a prospective customer would have. Trust me, in the last 6-8 months, and I'm representing my organization, we have more than 100 stations installed, 8,000 small stations installed, across the length and breadth of India. And how Government of India is helping us is Niti Aayog has earmarked various prominent highways and state highways. And if you talk about any highway or state highway, even within 30 kilometers radius, you should be finding a particular EV charging station. Since you talked about Delhi to Moradabad, let me tell you, if you search on Google, if you're traveling from Delhi to Moradabad, you will find 3 charging stations of my brand called In Charge within that particular highway. Rapidly, we are actually catering to all the highways and state highways. And, within next 6 to 8 months, you would find that there'll be one charging station of, any of the brands available in India within 3 kilometers radius when you are driving on any of the major roads. So there are 2 aspects. There are few organizations which are actually focusing on having charging station in front of a residential or a commercial complex. There are many organizations which are actually focusing on
Highways.
having stations on major roads. So there are difference of opinion with respect to organization strategy. But 6 to 8 months and you would not find a range anxiety ever. A, because the automobile companies are manufacturing, batteries which can take you to 400 and 500 kilometers in one charge. B, because the company like Servotech, we are actually, pointing certain locations where there are high traffic for EV and we are expecting high traffic in future. So we are
That's
going to
right.
eliminate range anxiety in next 6 to 8 months for sure.
But I would actually second to that because even I drive an EV and I have kept that car only to drive from Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon.
Yeah.
Otherwise, even today, I don't think I would be able to take it ahead. But again, yes, coming back to the point, he said that initial cost is higher. But sir, trust me, the initial cost would only look higher in the initial stage. Once you would be having your electricity bill of 2,500 or maximum 3,000 per month, you would be thanking yourself for making that decision. On a personal note, I was spending across 18 to 20,000 on petrol every month, and now I'm spending hardly 2,500 to 3,000.
Yeah.
So that initial cost looks big or challenging only in the initial phase,
Yes.
but then every month you would be only thanking yourself. But again, infrastructure, when that is ready, I think that is when people would have their hesitancy removed all by themselves, and we will be seeing EVs everywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
People have a misconception that the battery needs to be changed after every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But actually that is, I think, not true. It has a lifespan of about 7 to 8 years.
See, battery technology is evolving. I mean, now there are batteries which works for 10 years as well. Now there are blade technologies coming in. I mean, every day the battery technology is evolving. And I think that can be addressed, that will be addressed because technology plays an important role. And all the manufacturers are working towards it. So battery problem and all these apprehensions would be addressed. And last thing, if you don't mind, I mean, this range anxiety to me looks like a myth nowadays. Because if you see all the buses which are plying from Delhi to Dehradun, Delhi to Chandigarh and all
That's
electric
right.
buses, and they don't have their dedicated station. I mean, you can charge your cars as well on those stations.
Right.
So if we start thinking beyond Delhi to Noida or beyond our vegetable markets, and if we take EV as our first car, probably the penetration would improve. So we as citizens should also be thinking on those lines. And we are doing better than how the CNG actually, transformed in India. We are
Right.
doing, I mean, EVs are doing better than CNG rate of, adoption in India.
Right.
So I think we should look beyond those anxieties. 500 kilometers में कम से कम 50 EV stations मिलेंगे, आप किसी भी road पे चले जाइए. If we talk about the urban infrastructure. So even as I'm talking today, you would find some 10 to 15 charging stations if you travel 500 kilometers from Delhi, anywhere from Delhi. I mean, you would find in the dense forest of Sariska, you would find 10 stations of various brands. So EV stations are there. We have to look beyond, what we think is not available.
I've just got a brilliant business idea, but I'm not going to share it in public. Whosoever wants to have it, just meet me outside at the coffee.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, sir. And over to you, Ankita. Thank you so much.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I kindly request, sir, please stay for a bit. And may I now request Mr. Samrit Bhattacharya, National Sales Director, ABP Network, to felicitate our guest. Can we have big round applause, everyone?